Enough time on this bench teaches you that people almost never walk into court carrying only what the paperwork describes. They bring choices, accumulated stress, bad timing, poor judgment, and sometimes a quality of pain that alters the entire temperature of a room before they have spoken a single word. Most mornings, what comes through my courtroom is ordinary. Traffic citations, parking violations, expired registrations. People who believe being late for work qualifies as a legal defense. People who think saying sorry with sufficient volume erases recklessness. People who have quietly concluded that the rules were drafted for someone other than themselves. I hear all of it. I work through all of it. And after all these years, I can typically identify within seconds what kind of case I am actually dealing with. Then there are the rare ones. The rare cases are not really about the paper at all. They are about whether the person holding authority possesses enough wisdom to recognize the difference between defiance and desperation, between someone trying to manipulate a system and someone simply trying to survive one impossible day at a time. That is precisely what arrived the morning Michael Chen walked into my courtroom. He was 20 years old, a student at Providence College, and before he opened his mouth, I could see he was carrying considerably more than unpaid citations. His shirt was wrinkled, his face was pale, his eyes carried that unmistakable swelling that grief leaves on young people who have not yet learned to conceal it. He did not approach the podium the way a young person typically does when they are trying to talk their way out of trouble. He moved there the way someone moves when every step requires authorization from a body running on worry instead of sleep. The clerk handed me the file, 3 parking tickets near the hospital district, 1 unpaid registration renewal. With late fees attached, the total came to just over $400. On paper, a simple matter. The city wants its money. The defendant did not follow the regulations. End of case. If you are lazy, if you believe serving as a judge means moving documents from one pile to another, then that is the complete story. But I am not lazy. I was not raised to be lazy, and I have not remained on this bench for decades to become a cashier in a robe. So I asked the only question that actually matters at the beginning of any real hearing. I asked him what happened. He swallowed, looked down for a moment, then said he had been parking near Rhode Island Hospital because his father was in intensive care. He acknowledged that the parking was illegal. He acknowledged that he should have addressed the citation sooner. Then he described what his days had actually looked like during that period. Hospital, school, home, back to the hospital. No sleep, no capacity to focus, no ability to think further ahead than the next hour. Anyone who has sat beside a dying parent understands precisely what that does to time. It breaks it. Days stop behaving like days. You begin living inside phone calls, test results, hospital corridors, poor coffee, and the sound of footsteps outside a room where someone you love is fighting a battle they are not going to win. I asked how his father was doing now. I already suspected the answer, but you do not guess in court. You ask. Michael looked directly at me and said 4 words that emptied the room. He said, "He died 2 weeks ago. I have been a mother longer than I have been well known, longer than most people watching me have been alive." I know what it sounds like when a young person says something using everything they have left and still sounds like they might give way under the weight of it. There are moments in a courtroom when the law is fully present, but something larger rises alongside it, not sentimentality, humanity. This was one of those moments. I asked when the funeral had been. He said the previous Friday. I asked his age again, wanting the room to hold it. 20 years old, standing in traffic court, trying to explain why he had not paid parking tickets while his father was dying and then dead. That is the particular variety of absurdity that makes bureaucratic systems look as ridiculous as they sometimes genuinely are. I asked him to tell me something about his father. That instruction does not appear in any statute. There is no section of the vehicle code requiring a judge to ask a grieving son who his father was. But the law exists to serve people, and if you want to understand what justice requires in a specific moment, you had better first know who is standing in front of you. Michael told me his father had arrived in this country from China at 18 years old, with no money, limited English, and restaurant work as his entry point. long hours, careful savings. Eventually, he opened a small takeout place called Golden Dragon, then worked 16-hour days, 7 days a week to keep it alive and to give Michael and his mother a different beginning than the one he had started with. Different details, same story I have encountered repeatedly across my career. You arrive with almost nothing, and you build something one difficult day at a time so your child does not have to begin where you did. Then Michael told me he was pre-med. He wanted to become a doctor. He said watching the physicians who cared for his father had changed something in him. He said they could not save his father, but they had treated him with dignity, and that had mattered to everyone in that family. Consider what that tells you. This young man was standing in court with citations in his file and grief written across his face, and what he wanted from the future was not bitterness or revenge against a life that had taken his father. He wanted to become useful. He wanted to become the kind of person who makes terrible rooms more bearable for other families going through exactly what his had endured. Now, let me say something plainly, because mercy is misunderstood with great regularity. A courtroom is not a therapeutic space. Tears do not constitute a legal argument. People lie in court. People perform in court. People discover religion, family history, hardship, and humility the instant a fine appears imminent. I know the difference between genuine pain and theater. I have observed enough of both over enough years. Michael Chen was not performing. He was barely functioning. Those are not remotely the same condition. I looked at the dates on the citations again. December 15th, December 22nd, January 5th. Exactly the period during which he had been watching his father leave in real time. I considered the geography of those citations. Near the hospital entrance, not outside a shopping area, not near a club, not along some coastal road in summer. Near the location where a young man had been racing every available day to spend whatever time remained with his father. By the precise letter of the applicable regulations, yes, the tickets were valid. I am not suggesting the signs had become invisible. I am not suggesting the city's parking requirements dissolved because tragedy arrived. I am saying what I have said consistently for years. Rules serve purposes, and judges are compensated to understand those purposes rather than to treat printed ink as though it were a religious text. Why do we regulate parking? To maintain flow, access, safety, and reasonable turnover of space. Those are legitimate objectives. But if a judge cannot distinguish between an entitled driver ignoring regulations for personal convenience and a grieving son trying to reach his dying father, then that judge should not be wearing a robe. That judge should be doing something that requires no judgment whatsoever. So I told him what I believed to be true. He was not out enjoying himself. He was not using the hospital as cover to avoid parking fees. He was trying to be precisely where a son should be when his father is dying. Then I dismissed every citation, not reduced, not converted into a payment arrangement that would have kept him sending checks to a system that had already claimed enough of his attention during the worst weeks of his life. Dismissed entirely. For a moment, he simply stood there, and I could see the meaning of those words taking time to reach him. Grief slows comprehension. It is something like speaking through water. Then his face changed, not dramatically in the way of human beings.